it's Nicole from outerinnerspace, and this video is about Cancer energy and ESP, so how extrasensory perception manifests for Cancer energy. So you can watch this for any Cancer placements, for fourth house energy, or wherever Cancer is in your natal chart, because we have all the signs expressed in our natal chart, and there will be Cancer position somewhere. There's definitely a fourth house in there, and the way ESP manifests is that it is multi-layered and multi-dimensional, and it isn't just confined to one sign. So the idea of this series is that you can overlay the energies and the different ways of looking at it and lean into the areas which makes more sense to you and fits your experience. And the idea is that you can watch all the videos if you have time and sort of start to piece together a story about how your extrasensory perceptions manifest and then lean into them. My hope is that you sort of start to see that extrasensory perception is something that is happening all throughout the day and night, and in these very subtle reactions and impressions that we receive, but quite often because we don't have an awareness of ESP or realize that this is what it is, it's so easy to override these impressions with logic and opinions of other people as well. And that can cause great harm to our relationship with our extrasensory perceptions. And I just feel that the exclusion of these subtle senses really can cause damage to our psyche and cause depression and anxiety and a lot of stress, because we're shunning this really big part of our essence. So hopefully in this series you get a broad scope of how it can manifest and practice leaning into how it works for you. So for Cancer energy, we're talking about our first water house. This is our first experiences with emotion and our own emotions and witnessing other people's emotions in early childhood and the emotional patterns that we establish from these experiences. And one thing I've said so far in this series is that our body and our energy field stores these kinds of experiences, these patterns, until we reach a point in our consciousness where we're involved enough that we can process emotions and understand what was a projection of another person's feelings upon us and what is actually true for us. And when we are young, in the first 7 years of our lives, we're in a theta range state, which makes us like quite sponge-like and absorbent to the feelings and the experiences which happen around us. And so oftentimes it occurs that we develop these emotional patterns or the ways of processing emotions which have been projected onto us because we don't understand projection and we don't understand what is ours and what is not and how energy works. And so it's worthwhile understanding waves of emotion can get stored in the body, and they act as like a discordant wave that can reenact in order for us to realize what's happening and process that original emotion and integrate the lesson and understand that it was quite often never about us personally, it was somebody else's wave, but we have stored that. And it's important to understand this detail for extrasensory perception, because quite often we build these energetic barriers or these energetic defense mechanisms in order to protect ourselves from any semblance of that wave ever coming through again, to ensure that we are safe and we are protected. And that's where Cancer will go into their shell and go recluse and go into confinement in order to protect from any kind of wave that is close to what was that original experience. And this is important to understand for ESP, because sometimes, because of that stored emotion, we can use that as a filter through which we see the world. And sometimes it can occur that because of these reactive defense mechanisms are so automatic, we can think that certain experiences are playing out again when it's just a wave that is in similar vibration, maybe not exactly as affronting, if that makes sense. So understanding where in the body these emotions and these waves have been stored, and cultivating a practice of tending to these blockages to ensure that they don't cast a filter over our extrasensory perceptions. Because if we're in a place of fear, that some dynamic is going to play out again, we can really shrink our perceptions and really shrink our ability to pick up more information that's actually playing out, because we are kind of hypervigilant and hoping that anything bad that's similar to that doesn't occur again. For Cancer energy, it has a lot to do with the sacral chakra, this watery chakra that is the storehouse of all our vulnerable experiences. And if you feel any blockages in the sacral chakra, if you feel any numbness there, if you feel any level of hardness there, then it's possible that there are stored emotions there that are beckoning your attention. And some ways you can do that is just applying breath there and being still and sending attention there and allowing space to circulate through these circuits and break up the emotions. And any kind of hip work like yoga or dance, anything that is concentrated on this zone can really help move the energy too. So a combination of stillness and attention and breath direction, as well as movement to break up the energy and to send fresh energy there, can be really beneficial. And that goes as well for the chest area too for Cancer energy, like the breasts and the armpits and the space between your ribs, like this protective barrier around the heart can also store a lot of emotion there as well. And it's when we breathe into these spaces and we understand that what we've stored is just a wave, that we are at a higher level of consciousness now to understand and to process and to let integrate, with the understanding that we're safe now and that we're protected now and we're not going back into those times, but we're a witness of them. Because what these are sensations, these are somatic sensations, and with the water houses it's about feeling, and that doesn't necessarily mean emotion, it means feeling the sensation of that wave and just letting that energy go through you. And that's a really powerful thing for Waterhouse energy to be able to do, is allow this energy to go through you because you absorbed it in that same rate. It's just about letting it go and realizing that it wasn't personal, even if it really did seem like it was. And you find what happens when you do this kind of body work and this kind of breath work, and you allow any holographic images to come up, you can kind of start to see more, because you're not holding this vibration that doesn't belong to you. You're not holding this energy that's within you that is a mismatch to your authentic frequency. And then the body becomes lighter and your energy field starts to emit a different vibration because it's not carrying vibrations that aren't yours. And then when you go out into the world and you have these perceptions or these experiences, you might find that your sensory input is enhanced, and those stored vibrations no longer become a filter that clouds perceptions. And that's really important in order to get accurate perceptions from the environment and from other people. And I talk about this more in the ESP notes I've put together in the first section, Body as an Antenna, that's free to read. And it talks about the luminous filaments of the energy field and how these experiences can harm those filaments. But energy is always moving, it's never stuck, it's solid. It can be small and practiced and on a little circuit, but it is always moving. And so it is possible to refine these filaments and restore them back to their luminous state. And then when you are out in the world, you're picking up all these details, like you might see an emotional reaction from someone and understand or have a thought download of a childhood experience that they had that caused that in the first place, and then it becomes like a non-judgmental experience. Instead, it becomes an opportunity for compassion. Or you might be able to give someone care that you can see they really need it in that moment, and you're available to it because you don't feel like you need to defend yourself, because you're doing the work, you're doing that ongoing work that helps refine your field and helps tune your senses. Another thing that I found pretty interesting, which I read recently, and this is from a book called The Hidden Lives of Dreams by Melinda Powell, is about how you can use your dream state to process emotions. And I'll read you a short excerpt quickly. It says, "If we look at the neurochemistry of the dream state in adults, we find a curious paradox, as areas of the brain involved in processing emotional memories become 30% more active than in the waking state. There is a surprising drop in the level of the chemical noradrenaline, normally associated with the body's fight or flight response. Based on these findings, it's proposed that dreams comprise a biological theatre for overnight therapy. It's hypothesized that the fall in noradrenaline during REM dreaming dampens our emotional reactivity, thereby allowing us to work through painful emotions, for the most part, without waking." So that's really huge, in that you can use the cycles of the moon and these really subtle states of consciousness in order to process these emotions. So this is what I mean about tuning to these extrasensory perceptions, in that there's such a wealth of opportunity available to you when you tune into these subtle senses. Another really beautiful way to help clear the energy is to immerse yourself in water and allow extra energy that's in your field to release down the drain, and take detoxifying baths to absorb new information, because water carries information, it has memory. And so in these intentional practices, you really can, through really subtle means, it's about connecting to these really subtle and sensitive parts of you and your psyche. You can have visions in these moments and see things that can really help you either release or just grow as a person. And it's when you tune into these visions and these impressions and these insights that you develop the relationship with your extrasensory perception and start to equalize the measure of like physical world concentration and etheric world concentration, because both are valid, especially for water signs. And another thing would be to sync to your moon phases too. I've put together a content library called Periods, Brainwaves and Astrology, which intermingles all of those things, and it's just designed to help you kind of tune into those subtle realms and the way that you're moving in phases like the moon. And that can be a really valuable resource, or just doing your own research onto your moon phases and creating that connection with the way that your body is moving in those similar cycles can be really beneficial to releasing energy and modulating your pace to a rate that is more authentic to you and allows for more of that yin essence to come through. Because this stuff is all very subtle, and it does take a slower rate, a slower pace and time when you consider the 4th house and 10th house axis of Cancer and Capricorn. It has a lot to do with the passage of time and the phases and the cycles and how we are supposed to grow and evolve naturally, and that includes integrating all parts of ourselves. And your extrasensory perception is a really huge part of yourself and of your experience, and my hope is that this series brings to light the importance of it. You might want to check out the Cancer Rising video I did. I realize in hindsight that that whole series can be done for just the energy of the sign and how the planet influences perception. So it has a lot of info about how the moon influences energy, so you might find some value in that as well. So I'm going to leave this video here. I hope you found some value in it, and I wish you well.